We're going to talk today about being a non-tech founder, founding a tech company, and all that comes with that. So I started working on Alioup, which originally was Queue Up, about 5 years ago, maybe almost 6 years ago now. And when I kind of jumped into it, I never thought of it as a tech company. I didn't really think to myself, "Oh, I'm starting a tech company, and I need to know a lot about tech." It was the original idea was to be a online fashion styling company. So at that time, I just saw it more of a service of fashion styling, and the tech part was more of just the means in which we were going to deliver the service. So at the very beginning, I didn't see it that way. And as I started putting something together, some sort of platform, I did not build it proprietary. When I started off, it was very much about, kind of piecing together what was already out there, what was pre existing, to just create a space where we could get done what we need to get done. Along the way, I started to realize that that was a little bit limiting. And at first, I didn't make the change. I went to market with what I had. I realized there were a lot of challenges, which is another story for another day. But as I sort of pivoted the idea and got deeper and deeper into the process, I started to realize that maybe I need more. So I actually went to someone locally here at the Nashville Entrepreneurship Center and met with him because I realized at that point I really needed some help and some direction. And in spending time with him and having a lot of conversation around what I need to do, he eventually referred me over to someone that was experienced in that space. That's actually what they do is build software. At the time, I literally did not even really understand what building software meant. Knew that it had something to do with technology and creating something from scratch, but I really didn't even understand what it meant. So the first time that I met with the person I would work with long term, it was really sort of just an education of what this might look like, how much this might cost, and just sort of an intro to software development. And I walked away from that meeting really kind of shocked, thinking if I do this, it's going to be a lot of money. It was way more expensive than I thought it would be, but still not really even understanding what it meant. So after spending some time with that individual, I realized that this is probably the route I need to go to accomplish the idea that I had at the time, which by then had turned into something a little bit different. The other piece to this puzzle that I think is really important is when you are a non tech founder and you are founding a tech company, you have to be sure, in my opinion, that the person you are working with, you can really trust that when you are that green to something, and you know so little about it and it's in a space that it's very easy for people to copy what you've done or take what you've done and run with it in a different direction. And you really need to have people involved that you can trust. And I felt like at that time, and I still do today, that the group that I've been connected to and that person in particular, I really could. And thank goodness for it, because the deeper I got into building software, the more I realized how much I really have relied on the opinion and the expertise of not only him, but his team. As soon as I made the switch to building something proprietary, and it wasn't just utilizing what was already out there, I knew that I had stepped into a world that was very different and not anything I had ever done before. It was exciting, but also terrifying at the same time, especially those first few meetings as I got into it. Some of the terminologies and, timelines, and these are some of the challenges you have when you're a non-tech founder. I had no idea how long it takes to build anything, literally. It could be the most simple thing or the most complex idea. And to me, it was all the same. I was such a fish out of water that this, again, is why I think it's so important that you have somebody involved in what you're doing to really help guide you in and make sure that everything's going the way it should go. Not only is it important for you to know sort of how long it's taking to do things, but everything is so costly. And also, you need to have a team that really understands what's important, because it's easy to get stuck on one particular project within the software plan. And we need more here, we need more here, we need more here. And to you, you might even feel like, yeah, that sounds so good. That would be great feature. But in the grand scheme of things, do you really need that feature right now? Or are you just building for an MVP? And even if you're past the MVP, still, do you really need that feature? Is it going to make a difference? And how long is that feature going to take to build? Are we talking 24 hours? Are we talking a few days, a week, a month, 6 months? All of those questions have to be answered because they're tied to dollars. also the outcome for the customer. What is best for them and what do they need and what are they looking for? But you have to like start to at least have some general knowledge and pay attention as things are being built to what exactly is being built and how long is it taking to build that and why. Another piece of advice that I would give, something that I learned that really helped me was I started to ask a lot of questions when things were being built and really even understanding the fundamentals of software. Where's everything sitting? It's on a server? Well, what does that mean? And is there more than one server? And those all that also comes with cost. And why are we picking the server we're picking? And even sitting with a software developer and watching them build code. And of course now it's even changing more with AI, and that's a whole another conversation for another day. It is, really understanding, well, where does it sit and how does it do what it does? Just understanding software. What does that mean? And if you have a good team that is really in it with you, they'll take the time to discuss that with you. And it's super important to do that. It's also important, I've learned along the way, that you divide up what you're doing. If you're building something pretty robust, you don't want everything to be given to everybody. There's certain parts of the code that you might have this person do or that person do, but you do need to be very, very careful of where everything is sitting and who has access to that because your product is that software. Now, I think as a company gets bigger, it's not just the software. It's the brand and the services and the partnerships and all the things that make a company become what it is. But in the early days, you have a product that someone can actually use online, and that is where your value sits. So it's very important to protect it and be sure that you have people involved in working with you that you can trust. In terms of like an imposter syndrome, I don't think I ever felt like I had that. I I was very honest and upfront about what I knew and what I didn't know. And I went into it much more inquisitive, wanting to learn. And I really find most people want to teach. There's certainly exceptions, but I think good partners, they appreciate your interests. They appreciate your interest in what they're doing. And, the more that you understand how it all works, the better partner you are to them. So, for example, I have a real issue with getting in the weeds too much sometimes with the software developers, and I will nitpick something way far past what it should be, down to the color or the font or something. Just this line is too smushed against that line. And sometimes that's warranted. There are parts of the software that the way it looks is super important and it is warranted to be that picky. There are other times where it's not so important. And you have to kind of learn when to do that and when not to. Also learning that, this is heavy stuff to build. And when you're jumping in and constantly interrupting, which I have a bad habit of doing, that I find something else we need, that, oh, this is really important, this is a priority, let's pause this and go do this. You have to be really careful about that. Having a clear plan of action and being able to prioritize and then be able to step away from it a little bit and let the professionals do their job is really important. I do think that your vision of why is the most important thing. You can be a non-tech founder in a tech field when you have a goal and a mission for your company that really means something to you. And holding on to that why the whole time is really critical because that will drive the way it's built. It will drive the teams. It will drive everything you're doing outside of that software because the software alone is not going to go anywhere by itself. The software alone doesn't sell. It's you and everything that you bring to the table and all that comes with it that pushes that forward. I'd be remiss without saying that you will burn cash like nobody's business. Software development will burn cash so quickly. And this is also why it's important to have goals and timelines that are agreed upon with everyone. Everything's not always going to be perfect. You may think something might take 2 or 3 days to build and ends up taking 5 or 6. You can also assume that there's going to be a lot of stuff done that's going to take way longer than you think it will. But it is important to have some sense of what that looks like. And then as you are going through this process, you will start to learn how long it does take to build certain features. Part of that also is because your product will be very unique to that need. And once you start to build the product and you get used to building it, and then you have sort of a theme in which the development is going along, then as you add things, it'll follow that same theme. And then you start to understand how it all works together. And then when you've had some experience, oh, it took us this long to build that and this long to build over here. And you start to realize why. And then you may not know exactly how it's done all the time. You might not be able to sit down and do the code yourself, but you do start to understand the length of time, the goals that are set. You start to be able to manage the process in a different way and manage your product in a different way. Of being able to estimate how important is this feature and how long it will take. How long is it going to take? And we have these 5 other features we need to build. So is it really that important that it puts off the other 5 for a month? Or do we need to rethink that? So the only way you're going to get that is through experience. You just have to jump in and do it. But do know that everything costs money. And unless you have somebody that's a co-founder that's building for equity, or you've hired somebody that's building for equity, if you're paying cash, it's very costly. And the more that you could think about that ahead of time, and I've said this in another episode that you could always assume everything costs more than it does. So assume that here as well, especially here at development, just assume it's going to be one of your top costs. So if you're sitting on an idea that's a tech idea because you're not a technical person and you're worried about jumping into that world because you just don't think you have the experience, I encourage you to just, really think about that, because I was also that person and it's not for everybody. It is a long journey and there's a lot to learn and there's a lot that comes with it. But don't be scared of it, that it can't happen or it couldn't be successful, because that's definitely not true. I have grown as a person doing it. I feel like I've got a brand new skill set I never imagined I would have. And I think really as we move into the future, also just having this much tech knowledge is a huge benefit to me. I think it's going to open up a lot of opportunities. It's given me the chance to build something incredible. And I feel like I'm more prepared for what's may come down the road too, of opportunities that may exist. Anything, whether it's tech or something else, just because you don't have background in it doesn't mean that you can't do it or you can't be successful. Everything we do in our life, we had to start somewhere. So this is no different. If you've got an idea and you want to do it, there's nothing wrong with going for it. Just, go out and find people that can help you and support you and teach you. And use the resources that are online and spend time really understanding what you're doing with people that know what they're talking about. Find the people that you can trust to go on the journey with you and go for it, because you're never going to know if you don't try.